Your deep dive this week, what do you got for us?
Just wanted to talk about the vice-captaincy loophole because we often get a little bit too caught up in the gun Supercoach players, the really dedicated ones. Well, I know there's a lot of listeners out there who aren't as religious around as we are. They still love the game, but not as full on. So I want to touch on what it is, how to use it, and then for Supercoaches who sit there and go, oh, I know what this is, we used it before, what score is required and what I look for in my vice-captaincy when they go well to consider doing it. Vice-captaincy loophole. Essentially, it's giving you 2 cracks via a loophole in the system in the game to get a captain right. Now, how it works is your vice-captain, you put it on, it has to play before your captain each week, obviously. What it's designed to do is that if your captain gets injured or doesn't play the game, it gets ruled out later in the week, you get your vice-captain score. So where the loophole comes in is that you pick someone early on in the round. Let's say this week you might use Tom Trbojevic. And if he goes really big and scores well and scores 180, what you do then is Nathan Cleary would be a popular pick later on in the round. You would take the captaincy off him, and then you would have to drop a player from your team. So this week it might be someone like if you've got Isaiah Katoa at 5'8" and Adam Doueihi. Adam Doueihi's on the bye. You'd have to drop Isaiah Katoa out of your team and bring Adam Doueihi in. Now, Doueihi would score you 0, which would initiate that captaincy loophole where your vice-captain gets the double score. You have to put the captaincy on the non-player, being Adam Doueihi, who's in your starting 17. Now, this is where the risk comes in. Because you're dropping a player, not only do you not get their score, but you get your auto-emergency score. Now, where this differs a little bit to AFL and Big Bash Supercoach, your auto-emergency is the lowest scorer on your entire bench, not just from that position. So if you drop a player from the front row and then you have a CT dub on your extended bench who scores 7, you're getting that 7. That's where the risk comes in. Now, as an example, a couple of weeks back, I had the VC on Nathan Cleary. He scored 124 points, and I know a lot of people were looping that. I thought about it, crunched a few numbers, and went, nah. Tommy Turbo had a nice matchup against the Knights. I said, I think I can get out of this better. Turbo ended up getting 106. I can't remember who I would have had to have dropped, but they went okay. I came out well in front by sticking with Tommy Turbo as my skipper, despite scoring 20-odd points less than Nathan Cleary. So there's a vice-captain loophole calculator on the SC Playbook website in the menu, which is golden. I use it every time my vice-captain goes all right, which gives you a guide on how to do it each week and whether or not it's worthwhile looping. Now, to get into it a little bit more, what scores would I take for my vice-captain to initiate that loophole? Essentially, there's 2 circumstances around it. One is, let's say your vice-captain goes off and goes really well. If it's a tough week for your captain, for skippers in general, or if the other skippers available have great matchups. This week, for example, my vice-captain will probably be on Tom Trbojevic and my captain, Nathan Cleary. Now, I really like that matchup for Nathan Cleary against the Leaky Knights defence. So because I like that matchup, Tommy Turbo, I would want him to go probably at a minimum 140 points. I'd probably be more inclined to want him to go 150, but at 140, I'd really consider doing that loophole. Let's say Nathan Cleary was taking on, a top-tier side, the Cronulla Sharks, the Melbourne Storm, whatever it might be. I would reconsider, and there are no other better options than that. I go, you know what, my skipper could get 50 or 60 points. In which case, I might look at taking 120 or 130 points from Tom Trbojevic, which is a loophole. So it is very circumstantial. You then have to weigh up, all right, who's the player that I'm dropping? If you're playing, if your worst player in your side that you're dropping is someone like Valentine Holmes, a gun starting 17 player, then you're like, well, that person could get 100 themselves. If it's someone like Isaiah Katoa, you go, you know what? They could be my auto-emergency anyway. They might not score many more than my auto-emergency. So you should always work on your auto-emergency being around about 10 to 20 points because things happen, especially this early on in the season. We've got a lot of cheapies there who can score poorly. So, mate, hopefully that was clear and made sense. And if it didn't, hit me up. But that's sort of my thoughts around the vice-captaincy loophole.
Yeah, and I thought you covered it really well. The only thing I would add is that, I think we've spoken over the last few weeks that, I think we've both used our vice-captain loophole a handful of times over the last few years. But this year, when we get to those round 13s, those bye weeks, take round 13, for example, Penrith, Roosters, Sharks, Melbourne all have the bye. So there goes a lot of your top shelf captain. It's an Origin week. Turbo probably won't play. So a week like that is a cracker where your VC, or like someone early in the week, your VC would be an absolute get on there. And I would sort of be willing to take a much lower score that week than what I probably normally would, which is probably where it becomes more important.
Spot on, mate. Those major bye weeks where half the competition are on the bye, because we only get our top 13 scoring players those weeks anyway, and realistically, because half the competition are on the bye, people will be lucky to have 13 anyway, we get a free crack at it.
Yeah.
So, like, if someone scores 90 and then the other matchup isn't great, you might go, sweet, I'll double that 90 for sure. And we'll chat more about that come those major bye weeks, but they are when it really comes into effect.
I think the last thing I would mention is that, obviously, you need to plan out, if you are going to VC someone, you need to make sure that you've structured the rest of your team that allows you to do it. So, for example, like you obviously can't captain someone that's on your reserve. So it might mean that you take a better player out of your starting team and reserve them, so that you are able to bring in someone like that. I've seen that happen to a number of people, especially in draft comps. They get to the end of the week, go VC, and then they go, fuck, I can't do it. It can't be done. So you need to be aware of all those things.
You might have 24 active players in your team that week and only one player is not playing. So you'd only have one opportunity to do that. Now, let's say that player is playing in game 2 of the week and then your vice-captain goes nuts in game 3. You don't have anyone to bring in to initiate that loophole. So you're right, mate. That's where you do have to do a little bit of homework before the round starts and go, all right, if I'm going player in X game, if they go nuts, do I have an option to bring in to initiate the loophole? It sounds confusing. It's really not once you get your head around it. So I said, hopefully that was clear enough, but it is a pretty simple concept. And while we don't use it very often, it is important to get your head around.
Yeah, well, you don't use it often, but when you do have the opportunity, very, very important. The only other a question I'd add to you, you said that about 140 is your mark that you would potentially VC at?
Yeah, generally speaking, I wouldn't be looking to go much lower than that.
Let me ask you, if it was 140 and you're considering it, if you had to make an extra trade to do it, does that sway your decision at all?
There are weeks where like that example, where it might happen, you go, shit, I don't have a player to bring in, but I can make it happen, especially with the buys now.
Yeah.
You can bring in a good player on the buy and not hurt you too much. To use an extra trade to initiate the loophole, you'd really want them to be more like 170, 180.
Yeah, 180 around that mark. Yeah. Yeah. It will come in handy one day, even if you are a keen Supercoach player that maybe you've never fucking used it, you know how it works. It's just worth a little reminder.
Yeah, and utilise it. People ask every time, what's the magic number? What do you loop at? It comes down to, are you a conservative Supercoach player? Do you take the risk and go for the upside? Generally speaking, I think I'm a pretty conservative player. When it comes to captains, I've just been burned a couple of times in the past by taking the loop, and then the captain you would have picked with a great matchup goes bonkers, and you're like, I just cost myself 150 points. Yep. The way it's worked out. So I tend to avoid it when possible, and I need a really good score. But like anything, mate, there's no right or wrong answer, because you could not take it, then your captain that you go with comes out and gets a HA 2 minutes in. Yeah,
for sure. All right, mate, 5-8 this week. Good God. Tough little gig. A lot of us have Isaiah Katoa, Joshy Schuster, a lot of us have, who's still not playing. He's on the extended this week, but I believe he's not going to play, and I reckon we might not see him for a few more weeks. So Josh Schuster's done exactly what Josh Schuster was probably always going to do to us, unfortunately. I think he's just going to be one of these guys, isn't he? It's just always something.
Always something.
He's incredibly talented, there's no doubt in that, but there's just,
Yeah, me too.
There's just always something.
Yeah, Joshy Schuster's brother. I love the man, but if it's not a quad, that's one of the great stitch-ups, because I brought him in off the back of that news. Yep. But, always something, isn't there?
So, as it stands right now, I've got Katoa, I've got Schuster. Are you in the same boat? You got those two or not?
I've got Dewey there.
Dewey. Oh, good God. Yeah, so you're going to make a trade this way?
Yeah, so there's obviously Garrick, Dewey, Taps pulling out on me last week. I will potentially...
Yeah, I thought when we were coming down the hall and you said Joe Tapano is the most selfish bastard of all time, I thought that was a bit over the top. But
I would never do a Raider. Any other team in competition, absolutely. Yeah, so we'll get to trade shortly, but I have to boost this week in order to get Nico. Mm-hmm. And, so I'm still working out my third trade as my third cash grab. I'm working out the best option there. But there's a chance that I hold Adam Dewey just for another week just because he's not causing me any dramas. He bounced back last week, back to 5'8", looked good, was on 66 odd with 10 minutes to go. And then speaking of ACLs, poor bugger. I was so happy to hold Dewey, I'll be honest. But anyway, that's done and dusted. So, 5'8".
Yeah, so obviously you got your Cody Walkers, you got your Cam Munsters, you got your Dill Browns. I'll be honest with you guys, very busy week. I haven't actually sat down and have a good look at my 5'8" yet, so like you guys, I'm going to be guided pretty heavily by the big T-Rex over here.
Mate,
see if you can sway me.
That public holiday...
It's rattled me.
It's just rattled NRL content creators. Like, Bloke in the Bar podcast we did yesterday, that was straight into SC Playbook, straight into this morning. So the opportunity for study, minimal, but... 5'8", the big question is that, mate. Everyone's looking at moving on, say, Dewey, or they've got a bit of cash, and they're looking at which gun 5'8" do I run with. And everyone's saying Brown v Munster v Cody. Cody's, I think, the second or third most traded in this week, and Munster's about fourth. So people are leaning that way. I am leaning towards probably Dylan Brown as an overall player because he covers the three major Origin bye weeks. He's also at 672K. He's got a very large break even. I think it's about 130. I'll double check that. But big break even. Like, he will be so valuable for that bye period. You probably don't have to get him now. You can wait until round 13 for the first major bye week and wait for him there. But Munster is already at top dollar. Munster's 820K, break even 69. Decent matchup this week, but they've got the bye in round 9. One to be aware of, like particularly at hooker, if you've got Harry Grant and say a dud hooker or Christian Welch at front row, a few of these sort of things. So keep an eye on that one. But look, I love the Mad Dog. I wish he was in my team. But the bye coming up, he'll be full on over the Origin period. He'll be rested for games that I'm sure at some point on top of the ones you'll already miss. So I'm just looking at full output for that. Don't love it. Cody Walker, the Bunnies draw gets...
They play the Dolphins this week, but then they play the two best defensive sides in the competition so far, Penrith into Brisbane.
Last 3 weeks, 3-round average of 96. Before that was a 3-round average of about 38. I just think the time to get on Cody was a week or two ago, and congratulations to anyone that did, but I think probably the value's gone from there. He will make a bit more coin. He's got a break of 0, I get that, but... Yeah, I'm not so convinced.
My other worry with Cody is that game last week might have just been waking the sleeping giant in Latrell.
Yes, and that's what we saw last year, didn't we?
Yep.
That even the back end last year, even when the Bunnies went on a tear, Cody scored all right, but it was just the Latrell show every single week. Yeah,
and after Penrith and Brisbane, they play Melbourne as well. So, pretty tough gig.
Yeah, so look, that just leads me towards Dylan Brown, who... With a really tough draw to start the season, D-Bags went really well. Started with 32 against Melbourne, then turned up against the Sharks, 88 against Manly, and then he went Penrith and Roosters, 50-odd against those two, and then the 63 against the Tigers. But the draw's good from now on. Doggies, Broncos, Knights, Titans, Raiders, like it looks all right. He's coming down in price, so he's the value play. He averaged 74 last year. I'm leaning towards Dillbags.
Yeah, I haven't had a good look at it yet, but I like Dill solely for those buys and everything. He's in a good side. He's getting Sean Lane back as well. They know how to score points, Parramatta. So I'm leaning towards Dill as well. I completely agree with what you said on Cody Walker. I think 2 weeks ago was the play. I think you're chasing points. If you go on Cody now, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong there, but I think that was the play. And I just think Munster, I mean, fuck, if you've managed to get Cleary and Hines and you can somehow afford Munster, credit to you. But I'm not sitting in that boat. You've got to trade Hines in this week too, don't you?
I have to get Hines. So, like 5'8", I'll be looking to get D-Bags in the next week or two. But hopefully next week when he bottoms out a bit more. But as I said, exhausting a lot of cash to make Nico happen this week.
What were the odds of Nico Hines at 902K after 2 games to have a break-even of 0, by the way?
Oh,
fucking freak.
If you asked any rational Supercoach mind, probably about $1, but...
Unbelievable.
And then... You know, if you wanted maybe a bit of a flyer, Matty Burns at 570k. He's averaging 50. Doggies, Parramatta this week, I don't know. We know he's got it in him, but just week to week, there's a few strike weapons in that side, a few injuries still. One that I will throw out here, well, speaking of curly ones, people desperate to free up cash for Cleary or Nico, and there's a lot of people out there, mate.
Yep.
Cody Nikorima. Now, I know he's certainly not the ideal buy. Probably won't be coming into my team, but you can make a case for him. So he's 265k. He's dual 5'8 hooker. Break even 66, so certainly one you'd like to wait on this week. But his numbers from the past are okay. You know, we know he's not a big base stat sort of player, but we know he's got plenty of attack in him. Averaged 30 points per game in 2 games for the Warriors in the halves. That was at the start of last year. I think they were 80-minute games. The year before that, played 3 games at fullback, 80-minute games, averaged 46 in those. The 2 years prior, the ones that excite me a little bit more, averaged in 2021, he averaged 71 minutes per game for 54 points. And the year before that, 2020, he averaged 70 minutes per game for 52 points. So pretty decent numbers there. If he's playing 80 minutes, you know, he wouldn't have to do anything spectacular. You wouldn't necessarily have to play him in your 17. Just one that, just thought I'd throw it at you.
No, I can't do it. I'm happy to be proven wrong by Wayne Bennett for the fucking millionth time. Nikorima will be an immortal in 3 weeks at this rate. But no, I not for me.
Probably not for me either, mate, but I thought it was worth flagging.
So who is for me? And it would be a huge gamble, but in 2 weeks' time, one Kalen Ponga returns at 5'8". You might want to wait a week or so. He's obviously got that 1 in his rolling average, so you'll get KP pretty fucking cheap in a few weeks' time. He's already at 530. He could drop to, you know, low 4s there, especially if he has a quiet game and he returns. They might bring him off the bench or something. I don't know. Like, it's just, I reckon there is potential there for KP. And if he doesn't, they play the Panthers this week, so he won't be back. The only thing is, though, that he doesn't play the Panthers. I don't think he plays the Cowboys. Or he might play against the Cowboys. I reckon that Parramatta game round 9 is looking juicy. He's got the bye round 10, and then we go into the Origin period. That's the only worry with KP, is that
interesting, yeah,
you might not see him all that. You might not see him all that much if he's fully fit and available. You probably won't see him all that much,
especially as long as the Knights are going all right, because they're playing some good footy at the moment.
Yeah,
they've got numerous. I thought Crossland was good on the weekend in the halves. Defence really good. Tyson Gamble's back in this week into the halves. He's been solid. So like, they don't need to. If they were going terribly, they're sitting in the top 8, aren't they? They're 8th or something.
They're 8th. Yeah.
They're 8th. If they're going terribly, they're like, we need him back and we need to win games. But they probably don't need to rush as much. But yeah, it's like I went against him early on in the season because I didn't want to take on the concussion risk. He stung me last year. That was at 530k. It's a bit of a different story. If he gets down to like early 400Ks with that break even, which, as I said, there's every chance that he does. So to pick him up at that price, even if then he does get in, just like, well, you know, I moved on Isaiah Katoa to him or something. So, yeah, worth keeping in your plans.
What about, and I know that he's a bit of a pod player, I'm not seeing any options that are standing out to me outside of Munster I can't afford, and Dill, who I'm more than happy to have for the buys, but I'm not stoked to have Dill Brown in my side. What about like a punt on like a Luke Keary or someone with the Roosters getting all of their troops back? It's definitely not for me, but...
Oh, mate, you talk about blokes where there's something always happens to them. I have been so agonising close to buying him the last 5 years of Supercoach at a different stage, because when the Roosters click, he can rack up points, he can score big, but can just find an injury, lots of head knocks. You know, he's always one bad head knock, not even a bad, he's always one head knock away from missing a stretch of games. So definitely flyer potential, but probably not for me.
Tell you what I'm very close to doing, getting out the bat signal. Luke Metcalf. Come and save us, my friend. Please come and save us.
How far is he?
He's over in the States at the moment, I believe, getting it all sorted. So when Metcalf does come back...
He could have slid straight in at 5'8", couldn't he?
Yeah. Tomato Martin's out now.
Yeah.
You've obviously
For
got Dill
while,
Walker.
long term.
Yeah. 6 to 8 weeks.
Didn't pick Volkman?
He hooked Volkman the week before.
Bloody hell.
Ron's been killing it in Cup 2.
Yeah.
I'm his biggest fan in the world, but he wasn't overly impressive in that game of first grade, to be fair. But yeah, I would say that Volkman has fallen down the pecking order.
Jeez.
What about Dill Walker, mate? Obviously, what is he now? What is he, CTW?
Mate, I haven't even looked at him.
I think there's a question about him later as we get to him, but he's CTW/2RF, playing 5'8" on that left edge. We know that he'll take a heap of runs, he'll get through a bit of work. Warriors doing well.
Loves a run.
Loves a run.
You're touching him.
430k. We'll talk
He's
about
an
him
awkward
soon.
price,
He's an
but
awkward price, but these are the depths we're going into at the moment. He's looking pretty grim. Mate, 5'8", are we done and dusted there? Pull the curtains on it?
Yeah, all sorted, mate.